Welcome, everybody, to this episode of O365Eh. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Microsoft Places. Microsoft Places is a workplace app that helps coordinate work and optimize the workplace. It's available in Microsoft Teams, and with some new AI features, it's really, as Microsoft likes to put it, reimagining the workspace. So we're going to cover what it is, the value prop, core features, and then talk about some licensing and how to configure it. So with that, Habib, why don't you kick us off and let's talk about what Microsoft Places is and what the value proposition is.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to share my screen here. So Microsoft Places, as Kurt mentioned, is a workplace utilization application or tool that Microsoft has developed and integrated, obviously, with the Microsoft 365 modern workplace platform. There's a few different aspects of it. Obviously, it's AI powered as well, as Kurt said, but it's sort of broken down into three separate, I want to call them sections or buckets kind of thing, right? So the first one is like from a coordinate perspective. Really what this is meant for is to help you as an individual understand sort of like the fluidity of the workplace. So in the sense that like a lot of organizations, like we know, are requiring their employees to come into the office, 1, 2, 3 days a week, sometimes more. And so what this tool allows you to do is understand sort of when your workmates, people that you work on or work closely with are going into the office, and kind of helps you align, when you should be going into the office. So it kind of helps with that hybrid capability and provides the capability for like hybrid RSVP. So like, if somebody sends a meeting invite, I'll say like, oh, I'm going to be in the office or I'll be remote. So it'll gauge for the organizer of the meeting to understand like, oh, what size of a room, meeting room that I might need sort of, to book from that perspective, right? And then there's additional things like, Places Card, Places Finder, Places Explorer to be able to book a room or book a meeting space from that perspective. And then the modernization side of things is really understanding sort of your meeting room or your workspaces, your desks that you have, being able to facilitate like physical equipment inside the UI so that you understand what capabilities these rooms have or may not have from a workplace perspective, so I can book those specific rooms. And then lastly is the optimization part, where there's a large analytics workspace that they have in order to understand sort of how your spaces are being utilized, right? Are my meeting rooms being maxed out on a specific day on a specific floor in a building, or are my workspaces maxed out or underutilized, right? So then maybe you can start maybe reconfiguring certain things. Maybe you need more meeting rooms or less meeting rooms and more workspaces for your hybrid users to come into. So that's sort of like the analytics side of things. And then obviously, like everything, we'll talk about this a bit deeper, has an integration with Copilot. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit later as some of the feature set that you can get into with that. So with that, I sort of want to just quickly jump into a demo, and guys, feel free to ask me some questions as we go along here. So one sec here. Oh, you guys can see the screen? Yep. Cool.
One quick question before we get started, Habib. So is this a standalone app plus all the integration in Outlook and the other apps?
I can't. Yeah, so it's kind of a standalone app, but as you can see here in the URL, it's actually sitting on top of Outlook. So if you go to outlook.office.com/places, that's where the actual Places app resides. So it's a separate app on top, I guess, if you want to say, of Outlook, and you can interface these into like the main application that you utilize. So you can specifically go to this URL here, or you can embed the app inside of Outlook and inside of Microsoft Teams, and I'll show that as well too.
Got it.
So here we have our landing page for places. If I had multiple locations, I could search for a specific building. So if I had like a, Contoso NY, I could flip between the two buildings here. And then I have the options here to either check in, which I can check in to say that I'm in the office, but I don't have any bookable desks or bookable spaces yet. So what I want to do is I want to say like, hey, we have this room finder capability. Say, help me find a room or help me find a desk. So when I click on that, it populates the map of the actual organization and the floor. And, the way that this works is, you would take your floor plan, and there's some third-party companies that you can work with, and it's on the, Microsoft Learn site. But basically, you would work with them in order to map sort of your floor plan with the places functionality. And then you would upload that so that when you come into here, you would see, the room finder or the workspace finder. You would say like, oh, this room correlates to conference room HQ 1.0.31. I could select it, and then I could, book that particular room, right? So that's what it looks like from a mapping perspective. But if you're just looking at it from a room side of things, I can see here that, this room is accessible. It's a Microsoft Teams room. It has, spots for 8 people. This particular room has an IntelliFrame camera. This one here also has that. I also have the ability to just filter, right? So I can say I want something that has a Microsoft Teams room. I can filter all the rooms in my organizations that have that. And then I have the ability to say book, right? So if I send the booking request in, it is a Microsoft Exchange resource, so it has to go through the process of sending the meeting request to the Exchange mailbox and receiving that response back. Once I get that request back, then I will see the booking availability here. But that's for an actual meeting room. But now let's say if I wanted to actually book a desk, right? So now, with this hybrid capabilities, nobody really has their own cubicle anymore. You're really just sort of booking a workspace that you're utilizing for the time being that you're there. So I can specify, for this particular time here, I want to say, okay, I want to book this room. So it's basically sent off to the, workspace, and you can see once it gets sort of approved, then I'll be able to have that workspace when I go in. So you can see here I have the reservation here. I can cancel. Now when I go in, I can say, okay, I'm going to check in to say, hey, I'm in the office. If there's other people in the office, it will show me here who else is nearby as part of my work group side of things. And then here you'll say like from your group, you'll say these people you work with will show up and say when they're planning to be sort of in the HQ side of things, right? And then, yeah, Kurt, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. So that's a pretty neat feature, who's nearby. Is that based on what that person is scheduled, or is that using something like the Microsoft Teams location actively updating?
Yeah, so that's good segue actually for the question. So in here, it actually shows a lot like people that I have meetings with, and I'm working with. So under the people finder, it'll show here that who are those people, who can I work with. So if I go to the collaborators tab, you can see here these are all the people that I collaborate, and you can see sort of where they are specifically. Or where they plan to be, whether they're locally or remote. I have the option to also create a group myself to say, this is a specific people that, I work with a lot of the time. And I want to understand sort of, where they are going to be, so I can kind of schedule my time around that to get that face-to-face collaboration with them. You notice here that I have a guidance for individuals. So if I create this place, I can provide guidance to say like, hey, I think that we should all come into the office on this particular day, in-person day. And then so I would send that out, and then everybody would get it and say, yes, I agree to be, going into the office those days or not. So that's kind of what it looks like from the people finder perspective. Does that sort of answer your question?
Sort of. You answered half of it, but someone's location at any given time, is that updated at all by their location in Teams, or is it all based on what they've entered in the schedule, like in the calendar?
Yeah, it's all based on what they've said where they're going to work.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So you notice here I can change my availability. So I can say, okay, well, I'm going to be in HQ or I'm going to be a remote. So now that everybody understands, okay, well, I'm not going to be in the office that day. I'm going to be remote, on that particular day. Now that being said, go ahead.
And that's not synchronized at all with the location in Teams.
It is, but I mean, it generally, because Teams, you have the options to do a couple of different things in there. So it doesn't synchronize to say, where you are, because you notice here, it says I'm in the, well, I guess let me just see here. Let's see, what's today's date? Today's date is here. I'm going to say remote, confirm. So it unbooks my desk. I'm going to go into Teams here. Notice it hasn't refreshed yet. So I don't see that synchronization happen. I'm just going to refresh the screen here. Unless things have changed, sort of they correlate to one another. Yeah, so you can see here, it doesn't synchronize to say there, right? So I explicitly state where I am.
Okay, cool.
It's not tied to any of the dynamic emergency address detection stuff, so it's not tied to that aspect of the Teams client.
I think if it's not already being done, there was talk of them integrating it with the people and places signals and graph. So we have to dive into that a bit more in terms of what actual signals it's getting from graph in terms of the locations.
Yeah, because I know in this particular tenant, I don't have like the dynamic 911 enabled, where when you first sign in, if you're not in the confines of your organization IP range, it'll say, hey, enter in your address of where you're actually located. So maybe that's another session that we'll have to maybe dive into to see how that sort of maps all together, if there's any type of integration there. But since we are in Teams here, because it is an application, you can deploy it inside of Microsoft Teams as an application, and you can pin the location. So you can notice here I have it, in the top left, and really it's just embedding the same, interface that I've been showing, sort of just in the Places application itself. And you can say, okay, well, find out where everybody's working. I can go there, and it just shows the same user interface, right? Same concept applies when I'm in Outlook. It is an Outlook app that you can deploy through the Microsoft Admin Center through integrated applications. So you can push that application in and have it be pinned or available as an application inside the Outlook app. And then do the same functionality here as well too, right? And then on the flip side, there is also an admin side of it before we jump back into the other side. So where I have Spaces Analytics, so you need to be part of, you need to create a specific Exchange security group with the appropriate permissions to access the Places Analytics. But once you do, now you have the ability to come in and say, okay, what is the, workplace attendance or work plan attendance? What is my head count? What's my room, desks? And then I can sort of, dive into, obviously this is a demo tenant, so I don't have a ton of data in there, but you can see, when people have checked into the office, what are their averages are, what is the building occupancy. So this is where I was saying, like, hey, are our desks being underutilized, overutilized, right? This is just from a building perspective. And then I can sort of deep dive into the room side and then the desk pool analytics as well too, right? And then I think, as Dino mentioned too, there's a lot of graph connectivity there that you can pull some signals in that can integrate from like Crestron type rooms, where when you check in, or if it has like a signal from like the occupancy signaling, from the device itself, those metrics can be, populated inside of here as well too, right? And then you also have the capability on the room side to say that if you don't check in on the panel, because you know how like we did it from like an end user perspective, like I went and I checked in, I'm in the office, me, Habib. But when I book a meeting space, how do we know that that room is available? I mean, and nowadays, I'm sure you guys, in a lot of orgs that you guys have worked with, there's tons of meeting rooms, but there's no available meeting room spaces, right? Because everybody always books them. So from a meeting room perspective, you have the capability to say like, hey, if the room is not checked in on either the panel on the outside the door or on the Microsoft Teams panel in the room, release the room from Exchange after 10 minutes. So you can specify, like, make that room available. And then I can basically, that room is available. And now I can, if I'm walking by, I can see that room's available. I can hit check in on the panel and I can take over that room and start utilizing it myself as well, too. Any questions on this stuff here?
I mean, this looks really cool. I mean, the obvious question is, how do you customize it for your situation? But I know we're going to get into that, so we'll hold that question for a bit.
Yeah, go ahead, Dina.
Yeah, some of the features that you're talking about, I understand, are require Teams Premium licensing. So it's a bit interesting, like things like Places Finder, intelligent room suggestions, that auto release policy that you can set up. So I mean, it looks like there's quite a few really good features that are hidden behind a premium license. So maybe we can get into that a little bit as well.
Yeah,
some of the
sure.
analytics. I think the analytics feature as well is also a Teams Premium. So I guess the users wanting to use that feature would have to have a premium license assigned to them.
Correct. Yeah. So if I mean, that's a good segue to sort of where we were going. So it is, So as you mentioned, so what I do like about what they've done is that they've not created a separate SKU for it. They've basically said, this is a premium feature, and they basically put it into the Teams Premium license. So if your organization already has that, then you have that capability today. I know that a lot of organizations have already, provisioned other tools and or, Power Apps or something like that do the same functionality. And I did have some discussions with a couple of organizations around this where it's like, hey, I know I have the license, I have it, but we already have this capability with this other software. And my recommendation would be is like, okay, well, I understand, a lot of those are generally SaaS-based things. When you're coming up for renewal, it might be worthwhile to start looking into, Microsoft Places, because you actually own it from a license perspective, right? If you compare the functionality side of things. Michael.
I mean, I think similar to what Dino was mentioning, like there's a lot of roadmap items around like this data working with Copilot and like space analytics and like going over your utilization. Is that going to be part of Teams Premium? Okay, so it is part of the Copilot license.
Yeah. So let's dive into how you can access Places features. So there's three different ways, right? One is using the core Microsoft 365 license. So whatever Microsoft 365 SKU you have, you get this functionality. So you get the ability to create a work plan, RSVP, hybrid RSVP, when I respond to a meeting request. See who's coming into the office, right? And doing that from your Outlook calendar, your Teams calendar, et cetera. And then workplace presence. So being able to say like, I'm in office or remote, but I can't say where I'm located, right? So the current configuration or capabilities that you have today, where we show like, remote or in office, that's what you get from a core functionality perspective. So you get a good amount of functionality with just the core features. Now, when you enable the premium side of things, this is where you get like being able to book a desk or a room, intelligent suggestions. So this is where like the AI capability comes in that says, hey, maybe you should be coming in to work on this particular day because, Michael and Dino and Curtis are going to be there. The Places Explorer, the analytics side of things, understanding that the auto release capabilities that we talked about, the guidance, where it says like, hey, I think we should be in the office on this day, to give guidance as the workplace admin or manager of that little workplace tool that we did. So you get this capabilities from a Teams premium license perspective. And then from a, obviously everything has a Copilot integration, right? This is what you get with Copilot. So again, I think it's broken down into three different ways, right? One is me as a user to say like, hey, book me a room for reoccurring meetings and stuff like that. The second part is saying like, hey, recommend what days into the office. So I can go into Copilot and say, hey, based on my schedule and meetings that I have with people, and it'll look at, if you guys are in the office or not, what days do you recommend that I should go into the office? And I can use obviously Copilot in the natural language to be able to do that. And then lastly is like the analytics side, right? If you really don't want to look at the analytics and try and dig deep into some of those things, you can use Copilot to ask questions to say like, hey, what floors in my office are underutilized on specific days, because maybe you turn off the lights in that building or that that floor because you feel it's underutilized, or you make it unavailable, or maybe you can say like, are my rooms being underutilized or overutilized, and then maybe I can take some of the space and build new meeting room spaces, maybe like in the office, right? So you can use Copilot to start asking sort of the natural language questions from that perspective. Cool. All right, so I just want to, I'm going to just quickly talk about this from like a hierarchy perspective, understanding it. Really, it boils down to, you have a building, each building will have a subset of floors. Those floors will have specific sections. So you can say like, northwest corner, southeast corner, those type of things. And then in those sections, you can create a desk pool, or, in those sections, you can say, there's conference rooms that are there as well too, right? So that's kind of how it's broken down. So when you're building these places, you want to sort of have your resources in the Exchange sort of broken down. And so a lot of organizations have created, the rooms and stuff like that already, in advance, because, that's what they use today to book things. So the cool thing about Places is it's all done in PowerShell configuration. I don't have my environment up to show, but essentially what you can do is you can have it analyze all of my different rooms and workspaces that I have, and then you can have it automatically create the places based on the configuration. So you'll say like, hey, analyze my config, and then it'll download a CSV file, and you can say, yes, these are correct, whatever. And then now you can start specifying like, oh, this room is in this building, on this floor, in this location, right? This office. And then once you have those columns sort of mapped out in the CSV file, then when you rerun the Places PowerShell command, you can import that CSV file, and it will automatically go and create the structure for you. However, if you don't want to do it that way, you can do everything manually. You can create all of your resources manually. You can do all the mapping manually, all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, you would work with that third party to sort of take your floor plan and create the map file to upload that in order to use it inside of the Places application.
I think the big thing with Places is it adds that hierarchy, whereas before we were using like room lists to kind of mimic this hierarchy. So the level of effort, I don't think, is that much more than what people are doing today with the room list. I think now this is like in a structured way that can benefit from like a floor plan and other things like that. Yeah.
Agree. Yeah. Like I think it's it'll help structure things like you said, and just clean up, right, the information that's in there, because I think that, you know, when you're looking at it through the room finder, you can start adding all those different tags to say like, oh, this room has this or this room has that. Or, you know, what I was thinking too is like, you could even say like, hey, these desks or these desk pools, you know, these ones have like sit stand desks, these ones have a docking, these have dual monitors, these have single monitors, right? So it's being able to filter by and add tags based on the workspaces, so you can make the appropriate decision to do that. But it's, again, it's a big sort of cleanup exercise to make the rooms and spaces and places more efficient. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got from from our you know, demo and presentation side of things. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. I'd love to answer them.
Just quickly, Habib, have you worked with any organizations deploying this? And if so, I'm just interested in, I don't know, what are the top like 1 or 2 challenges people have with it?
So not yet, because it did just go GA at the end of January. So it's kind of like a month. It's kind of like a month old. But there are a lot of organizations that are definitely looking into it, given that it has that super tight integration with M365. A lot of the other apps that I've seen and clients work with, they don't have that tight integration. Everything is kind of separated. You don't really know sort of, you know, what's in the room properly, unless they go through some of that functionality. But really, it's just like, oh, I want this room. I don't really know sort of what's configured in there. So I do like that tight, obviously, that tight integration with M365. And I understand, you know, like I mentioned before, that a lot of organizations have already either purchased or subscribed to other tools that they're currently using, or built homegrown ones, like out of, let's say, Power Apps or something like that. Whereas, like, if you're coming up for renewal for those SaaS applications, or if you built like your Power App one, you know, this one I think would be really powerful for you and your organization to start looking into, especially if you're licensed for it. And also, if you're not licensed for it, compare the cost of what the premium license, Teams premium license would be compared to sort of what your third-party SaaS app is. Again, that third-party SaaS app is only going to give you the one feature set, right, as far as like booking rooms from that perspective. But I mean, from a Teams premium perspective, just to go back, right, you're going to get a bit more functionality from a Teams premium perspective than maybe just the general, here I'm booking a room and I'm booking a workspace tool. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, I think the Places Finder is a big driver to more Teams premium seats. Yeah.
Yeah, because you get all the rest of the capabilities listed here on the slide, right?
Yeah.
Ironic, we're covering this just in the last 2 weeks. I've talked to 2 people who have a homegrown application to solve this very problem, and I've heard complaints about it. So definitely something that's needed for the flexible workspace for sure. All right, well, thanks, Hab. That was great. I learned a lot, so it's always a good thing. And all right, well, we'll see everybody on the next podcast. Thanks.